Well, it's not quite Easter yet, but it's time for us to do a Photoshop or PhotoPea Easter review assignment. So if you have opened up my handout, then you have downloaded this file, which will be the starting file for this project. You won't have to add any additional pictures. This is going to be a review that will end up looking something like this, with your name going this way, with a little Easter bunny clip art with his ear going over one of your letters. This pattern inside the letters, and then some sort of other thing added in here to the Easter basket. So this is the example of what the layers would look like in Photoshop, but we're going to complete this in PhotoPea. You could use either one. Almost everything will be pretty much identical in these, except whenever you add your name, PhotoPea does not have a vertical type tool, so you won't be able to utilize a vertical type tool. You'll just have to hit enter after each letter and then adjust that line spacing or leading in PhotoPea. So let's get to it. Hopefully, again, you've already opened up, or rather downloaded, and then opened up the document from the Google document. So here's my Easter Fun A, which is what you're going to open, and it will look like this. You'll go to File and open that from your document that you have saved on your Google Drive. In my school, we're using Chromebooks, so they would be opening this from their Chromebooks. Now, you can't just hit plain old save in here and save it back to your Chromebook. You will have to save when you're finished as a PSD file, and I suggest like saving, if you don't finish it all in one sitting, like save it as, Easter Fun Monday if you started on Monday, and then open up the Monday version and then finish it on Tuesday and then call it Easter Fun Tuesday, just so that you have a backup copy in case something goes crazy. All right, I've already named these layers for you. Let's go ahead and we'll start off by turning off all the layers except for the one that we're going to deal with right now, which is this egg pattern. Again, we're going to take that type tool and come and click over here to begin typing. When you click one time, give it a second, it will load your font, and you'll see the cursor, which will not be very big. So I'm going to go ahead and scale that up. Now I have a name that's only 5 letters long, so I can use a pretty big font. I would also suggest that you use some sort of a kind of a fat font. I'm going to go with this Dijajati, whatever that is, or you could do Distant Galaxy, or whatever. That Distant Galaxy is fun. That's kind of Star Wars feeling. We'll go that one. So you're going to go ahead and type in your first letter over here, and then hit enter. Second letter, enter. Third letter, enter, and so forth. Now your name, again, you may not be able to use that big of a font. We're going to select all of these and use the character panel to make changes. It's kind of funny, I recorded some tutorials last week and they didn't have the buttons identified, and they have since fixed that, so it's kind of nice. Leading is line spacing, and you're going to want your line spacing to not be as high as your font size. So my font size is 122. Notice at 100, these letters are not quite touching each other. I could make them a little bit closer, even 88, and put them much closer together. Or I could space them out a little bit and go bigger with my font. So kind of up to you here how you want to do that, but you want to make it so that you can fit your name on there and the letters are just close to each other, and then turn that character panel off so you can see. You're going to go back to the move tool and move it into position. Now we can move the pattern later, so don't worry too much about the pattern. Just worry about getting your name in there. Again, if your name is longer, you may have to use a smaller font size here. Now we are going to put the pattern inside of the letters, and to do that we reverse the order of these. So I'm going to take Tanya and put her below the egg pattern. Click on the egg pattern and right click in the space to the right and click clipping mask. And clipping mask takes the pattern and clips it down into the name. So there we go. We can still move the pattern around. So right now I'm clicked on the pattern layer. So see, I can move this around and put, wherever I want these things to be. Okay, so you can go ahead and make a decision about that. I think I'm going to put mine like that so the T has the pattern stripes on there. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and change the color in here. It's kind of green, which matches a little bit too close to the grass color. So we're going to add an adjustment layer. That's the one that looks kind of like moons. Be sure you click on the egg pattern layer. We'll click on that and go to hue and saturation to change the color. Now if we start dragging the saturation or the hue right now, it's going to change it to the entire document from here down. See, and that's some crazy business. Okay, we don't want to do that. So we're also going to clip the hue saturation layer into the egg pattern so it only does it to the layer it's pointing to, which will be this egg layer. So I'm going to right click again, clipping mask. So now the hue saturation, so the color change is happening to the eggs, and the eggs are going inside the name. All right, now turn your saturation up so that the color is a little bit brighter here, and then we can move through here. And if I go all the way to the left, I get kind of a nice pink color, or you go all the way to the right, you'll get pink also because the reds are on the end. And again, you can increase that saturation even more if you want it to be a little more neon, but that looks good to me. Okay, so I'm going to close out my properties panel because it's kind of in the way right now. And now we have a different color for those, that pattern. All right, now I want to add a drop shadow and a stroke around these letters. So I need to click back on the letters, not on the hue saturation, not on the pattern. So click on our letters. We're going to use the layer styles button, which in PhotoPea is the EFF, the effects button. And then I'll go ahead and choose a stroke. We're just going to go with a 2 or 3 pixel. Let's make it black. Looks good. There's 3. Now my things are touching quite a bit, so maybe 3 would be a little too much for my example, but certainly you can do it however you want. I'm going to just go to 1. Okay. And then again, if you hit the arrow key here, you can double click to add additional layer styles if you want to. And I do have a little bit, it's kind of hard to see, but I do have a little bit of a drop shadow. Not that much of a drop shadow. Let me pull the distance back a bit. There we go. All right, I'm going to hit OK. Now we've got a little bit of a drop shadow there behind that text. So there's before, there's after. It gives it a little bit more depth there. Okay, now let's move on. And you could lock these layers right now if you wanted to. There is padlock here, and you can tell it to lock all. So if you wanted to, you could click here and lock all of these so you're not accidentally moving them. But as long as we don't have our layers set to auto select, we're probably not going to accidentally move anything anyway. Let's turn on the little bunny and remove his background. Just like in Photoshop, we would go over here and choose the magic wand tool. Recall that the tolerance is how picky the wand is. If I click on this now, it does select all of that green background, but it's super picky, so it's not getting that shadow. And for the purposes of this, I don't want that shadow. So I'm going to press Control D to deselect and increase that tolerance. About 35 or so should do it. There we go. Now when I click, notice it also selected that green shadow. Now if I were to add a layer mask now, don't do it because you're going to have the wrong side, right? So we must invert that. So right click, inverse to select the opposite, and then we can go ahead and hit that layer mask button. And bam, there is our bunny. All right, I'll grab my move tool now, and you'll position your bunny wherever you want him to be. If you want his little ear to kind of go over the top of the letter, then you might want to put it right up about here. But we do want him to go behind the letter. We're going to let his ear flop in front. So I'm going to move him down behind the letter. So there he is, okay? Now, I need a chunk of his ear to go in front of the letter. I'm going to turn off these layers for a minute and make a copy of my bunny layer. So I'm just going to right click and duplicate this layer so I have 2. And we're going to call this one ear. And on this ear layer, and I'll turn off the other bunny layer for a minute. On this ear layer, all we want is this little chunk of ear. I'm going to zoom up here on this portion just so we can see it better. So I'm going to, and you can do this lots of different ways. You can delete the layer mask, which is what I'm going to do. It brings back all of the stuff from before. But all I'm going to do is grab a hold of my magnetic lasso, and I'm going to select this part of the ear. So this part that's going to go in front of the letter. That's not the greatest selection ever. Pretend that's a lot better than it is. Anyway, okay. Now once I have this part selected, I'm going to go ahead and add that layer mask. So it's just a little chunk of ear. Remember, we can paint on a layer mask. So down here, the top color would be the foreground color. So if I wanted to paint in some more ear, I would paint in white. And so I would take a brush and make sure it's good and hard because the edges of this are hard. And then click on this layer mask. And if I need to paint in some more of this ear, I can just kind of keep painting there. So if I missed some, see like there I'm getting too far into the rest of it. So let me turn the background off so you can see because there's some green there. So I would switch and put black on top, and then I can paint out that pink part and a green part. It's like an eraser, we're just hiding it. And then again, you can flip it back and put white back on top if you needed to paint back in part of it. Okay, that's good enough. The ear needs to go in front of the letters. So once I get all this back on, I need this little chunk of ear moved up here. There we go. So it goes in front. Now, if you did not reposition it so you can see your pattern, let me unlock my pattern so I can show you. It kind of, like when it's on the white, it's really hard to tell. See what I mean? So you might make sure that you've got a part up here where you can actually tell that the ear is flopped over the top there. Okay, so that's on there, and in my examples I have a stroke on the bunny and on the ear as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add on the ear a little layer style, little stroke, just 1 pixel again, and it may, and this one did, it may look a little funny because it's, and you can, let me take my zoom tool so you can see, oops, undo because that's going to move the position. The zoom tool, for whatever reason, I have trouble pushing it. So it's putting a stroke around the entire thing that I moved to its own layer, and unfortunately that then puts a black line there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take that paintbrush and paint back in with white on this layer mask down into here. So I'm just painting in the ear down in there a little bit, and then I'm going to flip it and paint it out so that it is like even with the letter. There we go. Sort of like that. See, that looks better. And then I'm going to copy this layer style. So layer style, copy to the bunny. Right click, layer style, paste. There we go. Now my bunny has that as well. Now, of course, we've got that big drop shadow on there. That's kind of the reason that my bunny looks kind of dark. See that? So, you know, I don't know, you might want to get rid of that drop shadow or make the drop shadow be just not so much. I mean, I have a lot of drop shadow going on there, so maybe I just need to chill it out so that you can see my bunny better. If you decide you want to move the ear and the bunny at the same time, because I kind of hate the fact that we can't see his eyeballs, click on the ear layer, hold Control. It would be Shift if we were in Photoshop. It's Control in here, and then click on the bunny layer, and then just take your Move tool, and you can scoot it over. There we go. All right, that looks good. All right, so that takes care of that. The last little thing on here is just to deal with this assortment of things. So there they are. And I chose to grab the carrot, but you could choose the chick or something. Let me zoom up on the carrot. I'm going to take my magnetic lasso again, and be sure you're clicked on the layer. And then you're going to work around. And of course, if you have my class, you know I'm all about like zooming up a lot because you can see it better. So here we go. Click, click, click. Every now and then click or backspace if it's acting weird. Click. All right, good enough. Go around. I really don't want the black shadow on the bottom, so I'm trying to stay on the inside of that as much as I can. All right, and then just as before, I can go in here and add that layer mask. Now before you add it, you can add into your selection using these buttons, just like in Photoshop. So I'd usually just take a plain old lasso and then sit it on Add to Selection. So like there's a little piece I'm missing here. I'm just going to run my lasso over that and add that little chunk in there. And you could zoom up real close if there's any little areas where you need to add chunks in or get rid of little chunks. Okay, there's a little piece over here I could get rid of. I'll put it on minus. Just run my lasso down that edge a little bit. And again, you can zoom up closer. I've just been doing this long enough. I usually don't have to. All right, now once I've done that and my selection looks good, I'm going to click on my Add Mask button, and then there it is. That one's pretty decent. So at this point, I'm going to zoom up, Control 1 to zoom all the way out, and then click on my Move tool and click on the Transform control. So that's going to let me then rotate this around. And then you can just stick it in there wherever you want. Okay, now if you don't want to have to do a lot of work on this, you can just stick it in the front. Now my overachievers, let's go ahead and put it over here, and then we're going to move an egg in front of this. Okay, and again, I want you to do as much of this as you can, so if that pushes you too far, no problem. You can stop with the little carrot in there wherever you want it to be. Now, if you do need to touch up the carrot, like there's some white around mine, remember, click on the layer mask, this black box, have black to hide, black is like erasing, or white to bring something back in, and you use a paintbrush. And of course, make sure it's hard because we need a hard edge on these. So like I'm going to take and paint out with my black brush. By the way, I really strongly suggest you hook a mouse to your Chromebook when you're doing these because it's really hard to work in here without a mouse. I have my mouse today. Okay, all good there. I'm going to turn this off for a second. I'm going to come all the way down here to my background, and I am going to grab a hold of some egg. So magnetic lasso seems to be my tool of choice today. I'm going to go around this little egg here. We don't need the whole egg because we're just going to put it behind a little bit of it, but we'll go like this. All right, so now I have this piece of my egg. Now I need to put this out on a new layer. So I'm going to click on my refine edge, which is like select and mask in Photoshop. That's going to bring it in here, and it always puts a border around it. Do you see that there? If I scroll my mouse up, you can see it. See how it puts that fuzzy edge? I don't know why it feels like it needs to do that, but if you pull this border back, it won't do that. Now it looks kind of a bit chunky right there. So you can take, again, same thing, that black or white paintbrush. Use your left bracket key to make your brush bigger or smaller. The bottom part isn't going to matter. It's just this part up here where your carrot's going to go. So white means show that part. Black means hide that part. So I'm already showing this part, but I can just go in here and there you go. But again, this part doesn't matter. The carrot's going to be over here. So once it looks okay over here, tell it to put this on a new layer. Okay, so it'll leave the other one alone. It's going to put this little egg on a new layer. So here is where it says background. That's my new egg. Oops. New egg. And then there's my actual background. I'm going to turn it back on. So, oops, there's kind of a little part in there that doesn't look right, but we can get rid of it. All right, I'm going to take this new egg. Actually, I want to grab the carrot and just pull the carrot down and put it between the new egg and the background. And then turn it on so you can see it. There we go. Now, if you have any issues with that, this is the thing I don't really like about the refine edge button, is it kind of makes things a little bit see-through. You know, like when I move this, oops, when I take my move tool and move my carrot around, you can kind of see through the little egg there. So it's not like the most perfect thing ever. Again, I could go back in and remake my egg if I wanted to try to fix that. But I'm honestly just not going to worry about it. So we're going to control 1. From back here, it looks fine. But there we go. So there is an example of how to do this assignment. Again, if you did it in one setting, you're pretty good. I would still save it as a PSD, and you can call it whatever you need to call it. But I would still put like Easter Fun Monday, if it was my Monday version, and .psd, and save that to your Chromebook, and it downloads it. So then if you needed to work on it the next day, you would have to go to File, and then on your Chromebook go to Open, and then open that Easter Fun Monday one to continue working. Now to turn this in for my class, we're going to turn it in as a PDF. And if you go to plain old export like we normally do, instead of choosing JPEG, we're going to choose PDF. It's easier for me to grade that way. However, notice this madness happens. Please pay attention when you get to this screen, because if you turn this in, this is what I'm going to see. So this is not good. All you need to do is click rasterize. That basically means like merge all these layers together and apply all the effects. So bam, there we go. Now it looks good. Now I can save it, and this rasterized PDF is what my students would turn in then to Canvas for grading. All right, that's it, folks. Thanks so much for watching, and let me know if you have questions.